भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरि ओम। We are continuing this spiritual quest. Today's first point is strive for the highest. We all have an opportunity to follow saner and better ways, but we cling to our particular toys and do not let go our hold. So we have to suffer, and we suffer until we learn the great lesson life teaches us again and again in innumerable ways and come to act wisely. Just as most people try to achieve their worldly ambitions and ideals, we should strive for spiritual life and illumination. But this most people won't do, and it depends solely on our own choice whether we take up the worldly life or the spiritual life, whether we lead a life of slavery and fear or that of freedom and fearlessness. We must strive to achieve something that is higher, that is not subject to change and decay. But we very often choose the path of avidya, that is ignorance, willfully and deliberately, because we cling to our phantoms of physical and emotional enjoyment, which after all we shall have to give up sooner or later. We all one day must let go the hold, and if we do not do this of our own free will, the toy will be torn away from us, and this will mean great sorrow and in many cases a broken heart. For most people, this is the only way in which they can be made to learn their lessons, but it is very painful and usually takes many lives. We should try to live a spiritual life knowingly, consciously, deliberately, in a spirit of dedication and singleness of purpose. This will of ours may be directed towards the higher channels of life or towards the lower ones, just as we please. If we are able to rouse tremendous enthusiasm in ourselves for the goal to be attained, then only shall we get the necessary energy to strive for it and do our utmost. In the world of the spirit, you very often find people with a chaotic brain. They do not care to follow any definite system and like to drift on the boundless sea of their emotions and impulses. So they attain practically nothing. In fact, just as little as the out and out worldly minded people do. No person with a muddled brain can have any success in the world, and much less so in the spiritual world. Settle once for all what you really want. Very often we want to attain peace, but follow a path that can only end in restlessness and trouble. There is a saying in Bengal, there are some people who, when they want to go towards the east, start walking towards the west. And if you ask them why they do so, they reply, because I want to go towards the north. Next point, the taste of truth. The lover, when dreaming of his beloved, imagines things that have no reality. The madman too imagines things that do not exist at all. All hallucinations are to be avoided, in spiritual life. We must try to get a glimpse of truth by following a systematic course of spiritual practice. If such a glimpse comes unawares, and if we are not properly prepared for it through long and regular training, the reaction may be tremendous and may even unsettle us for life. We must first learn how to become fit for such glimpses so that we can then make them our own for good. Spiritual evolution at first brings great suffering to the aspirant, not happiness. In the intermediate stage, his life becomes very difficult. Then he has no longer any real interest in what he has in the world and cannot yet obtain self-realization, which is still beyond his reach. It is just like hanging in mid-air without being able to go either up or down. The test of truth is this: whereas in the case of worldly things and worldly relations, you can never get any ultimate satisfaction. In the case of spirituality and spiritual life, you can get that perfection, satisfaction, which is not dependent upon anything external. So the great sage Narada says, realizing that divine love, a man attains perfection, immortality, and ultimate fulfillment. The really thirsty man always needs water, but those who are not thirsty can do without it for a long time. The really sincere aspirant will do all he is told, but people are so half-hearted and so little sincere that they are in no great hurry to follow the advice they are given. And then we want the purest water, not adulterated water, or water that has become terribly dirty. We should rather feel really thirsty, but should not go in for anything that is not good and pure. Truth cannot be realized without struggle. All life is no doubt a struggle. Everybody is struggling to achieve something or other. But spiritual struggle is a struggle of a higher order. It is a struggle for consciousness. Struggle, struggle, struggle. There is no other way. Let us not be afraid of struggles. Next point, the power of reality. It is often very difficult to have yearning for God in the beginning, and the reason is that God does not seem a reality to us. With most of us, this body is our soul, and it is for the enjoyment of this body on the material plane. It need not necessarily be a very gross form of enjoyment that we are most anxious. Religion to most of us is something highly amateurish and a kind of fashion, just like so many other fashions. But if someday, through our spiritual striving, God comes to be a reality, we feel that our whole being responds to that reality and longs for it alone. If the world is real to us, it absorbs our entire attention. If something else is real, that too does the same. That which we take to be real for the time being affects us, stirs up our feelings, draws out our will. It occupies our whole intellect. In fact, our whole being responds to this reality. If we carefully study our own lives and the lives of saints, we find a great difference. It is the reality that affects the minds of both. But the reality is something different to the saint from what it is to us ordinary people. To us, this world is real. To them, this spiritual world alone is real. Their whole life is filled with this one idea: how to realize the divine, how to make him a reality instead of an intellectual and vague concept. If we are able to appreciate what the saints call reality, we can also appreciate why they are ever ready even to lay down their lives for the sake of God realization. We should not, however, blindly imitate the saints. They may appear rather unconventional or strange in their behavior, but as we have said, all their thirst for God is based on a clear conception of reality. Those of us for whom this sense-bound world alone is real should be careful in our spiritual struggles. For us, success largely depends on the regularity and intensity of our daily spiritual practice. Very often we are so careless in this. Without steady practice, nothing can be attained in spiritual life. Spiritual life must be a life of dedication to the highest, a life of consecration and sacrifice and one-pointedness. So, we should be more wide awake and more careful about our own thoughts for our own benefit and for the benefit of others to whom our thoughts of lust, greed, or violence are worse than poison gas. Indeed, the havoc we create by our impure thoughts is far worse than that created by poison gas. By our impure thoughts, we affect people who do not even know impurity, but by our pure thoughts, we help others in their struggle after purity. Next point, divine discontent. We must rouse a tremendous divine discontent. The discontent the mystics of all ages speak of. Unless we are able to rouse in the soul this divine discontent, which can destroy all our attachments to worldly things and desires, we will not be able to get real yearning for spiritual realization. There can never be any real peace in the world, though we must play our part in it as best we can. There must never be any kind of slackness in our striving, nor any kind of satisfaction with our state of bondage. Such forms of satisfaction are very dangerous for all spiritual aspirants. We must consciously keep burning the fire of hankering and yearning for the higher life. We must never waste our energies for anything lower. We must never prefer the peace of lethargy to this restlessness for spiritual achievement. There can be no security unless we have already proceeded very far towards the ultimate goal. Any devotee may come to grief or have a nasty fall at any moment before he has attained to self-realization. So, we should never risk too much, relying on our own strength before having advanced considerably. Spiritual practice and prayer must be intensified. Constant prayer, day and night, constant meditation, constant thinking of higher thoughts would do us immense good. The mind of the beginner must be kept constantly busy with divine ideas so as to create the habit. After having created the right habit, the path becomes smoother and there is less strain in the life of the spiritual aspirant. We must give our whole mind to God, not merely a bit of it. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if I want to buy a piece of cloth worth 1 rupee, I will have to pay 1 rupee and not 1 paisa less. Otherwise, I shall not get it. So also in spiritual life. If you do not pay full attention, you simply don't get anything. If after practicing meditation perfunctorily for a few months or even years, you find that you have got nothing spiritually, you have nobody else to blame. What we need is perseverance. There must be steady, regular practice. Let us rather die in the struggle to keep our body and mind pure than give it up. What does it matter even if we die? What matters is that we realize the truth, that we attain our full stature, our true being. If we struggle our utmost, if we do our utmost, we will have fulfilled our duty. Then the rest must be left to the divine. Here, true self surrender and resignation to the Lord have their place. The man who has intelligence for his charioteer and the well controlled mind for reins attains the end of the journey. That supreme abode of the divine, says the Katha Upanishad. We should never be contented or satisfied with ourselves and think we have done our best. It may have been our best for the time being, but we should pray to the divine for greater and greater strength to be able to do more. Today I may be able to lift only 10 pounds, but I can ask for the strength to lift 100 pounds. My capacity can be increased, even if I think I have already done my best and I am doing my best, because this best is not a fixed quantity. Next point, example of saints. We must cultivate intense yearning for God, the unceasing, uncompromising quest for God that we find in the lives of saints and sages. Sri Chaitanya was a great scholar in his younger days, but at the prime of his youth he underwent a sudden conversion and became an ardent lover of God. His love for God was so intense that he could not forget Him even for a second. His whole life was spent in spiritual inebriation. His ecstatic devotion finds its expression in a small poem he wrote, in which he says, "Ah, how I long for the day when, in chanting thy name, the tears will spill down from my eyes, and my throat will refuse to utter its prayers, choking and stammering with ecstasy. When all the hairs of my body will stand erect with joy. Ah, how I long for the day when an instant's separation from thee, O Govinda, will be as 1,000 years. When my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at thy feet let me be, in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence. Thou, it tears my soul asunder. O thou, who stillest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone." Prahlada was an example of the saints praised in the Puranas. Even from childhood, he had intense devotion for Lord Vishnu. His demoniacal father tried all in his power to turn the boy to the worldly path, but the young boy braved all the cruel ordeals and went on with his static praising of the Lord. When the Lord appeared before the boy and asked him what he wanted, he said, "May I think of thee with that strong love which the ignorant cherish for the things of the world, and may that love never cease to abide in my heart. My Lord, Should thousands of bars fall to my lot, may I still always possess an unshakable and unflinching devotion to thee. In modern times, Sri Ramakrishna stands as an unparalleled example for intensity of yearning for God. His longing for the vision of God in all his aspects was so great that he did not sleep for 6 years. He spent his time day and night in various spiritual moods, which were so intense that people thought that he had become mad. His was indeed divine madness. In the book The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which contains his authentic teachings and conversations, we find the idea of yearning for God stressed very much. Indeed, we may say that it was the chief disciple that Sri Ramakrishna prescribed for all aspirants. The following passage is a typical example. The Master to Bankim and others. One must have for God the yearning of a child. The child sees nothing but confusion when his mother is away. You may try to cajole him by putting a sweetmeat in his hand, but he will not be fooled. He only says, "No, I want to go to my mother." One must feel such yearning for God. Ah, what yearning! How restless a child feels for his mother. Nothing can make him forget his mother. He to whom the enjoyment of worldly happiness appears tasteless. He who takes no delight in anything of the world, money, name, creature comforts, sense pleasure, becomes sincerely grief-stricken for the vision of the mother. And to him alone the mother comes running, leaving all her other duties. Ah, that restless is the whole thing. Whatever path you follow, whether you are a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, a Shakta, a Vaishnava, or a Brahma, the vital point is restlessness. God is our inner guide. It does not matter if you take a wrong path, only you must be restless for Him. He Himself will put you on the right path. Besides, there are errors in all paths. Everyone thinks his watch is right, but as a matter of fact, no watch is absolutely right. But that does not hamper one's work. If a man is restless for God, he gains the company of sadhus and, as far as possible, corrects his own watch with the sadhu's help. Bankim to the Master. Sir, how can one develop divine love? Master. Through restlessness. The restlessness a child feels for his mother. The child feels bewildered when he is separated from his mother and weeps longingly for her. If a man can weep like that for God, he can even see Him. At the approach of dawn, the eastern horizon becomes red. Then one knows it will soon be sunrise. Likewise, if you see a person restless for God, you can be pretty certain that he has not long to wait for his vision. All the intimate disciples of Sri Ramakrishna had this burning passion for God. Balaram was one among them. His first meeting with Sri Ramakrishna is very revealing. The day following his arrival in Calcutta, he started for Dakshineshwar. There was a great crowd in the temple garden owing to the presence of Keshav Chandra Sen and his Brahma followers. Balaram sat in a corner of the master's room, and when the party went to eat, Sri Ramakrishna called to him and inquired if he had anything to ask. Sir, said Balaram, does God really exist? Certainly, replied the master. Can anybody realize Him? Yes, said the master. He reveals Himself to the devotee who thinks of Him as his nearest and dearest. Because you do not get any response by praying to him once, you must not conclude that he does not exist. But, again interrogated Balram, why can't I see him when I pray to him so much? Sri Ramakrishna asked with a smile, do you really consider him as dear to your heart as your own children? No, sir, said Balaram after a moment's pause. I never felt for him so strongly, the master said in an animated voice. Pray to God, thinking him as dearer than your own self. Verily, I tell you, he is most attached to his devotees. He cannot but reveal himself to them. He comes to men before he is sought. There is none more intimate and affectionate than God. Balaram got new light from these words. Every word of what he says, he thought within himself, is true. Nobody ever spoke to me so forcibly of God. Next point is begin early in life. There are a good many people who think that they can leave religion to their old age after enjoying all the fruits of life. But their time may never come because after dissipating the greater part of their energy in physical enjoyment, there will not be much of it left for strenuous spiritual practice. Many people start spiritual life too late to get any great benefit from it. Many people realize too late that their life had been in vain. But they are better than the old fool who still runs after physical enjoyment even in old age, vainly imagining that he is a romantic young man. In the West, you meet so many of these miserable people. One has to begin as early as possible with one's spiritual life. Unless we have sown the seed of spirituality in our soul early in life, there is no possibility of creating this spiritual attitude in later life. Sri Ramakrishna one day warned his beloved young disciple Narendra about associating himself with Girish, the famous actor dramatist of Bengal. Master, do you visit Girish frequently? No matter how much one washes a cup that has contained a solution of garlic, still a trace of the smell will certainly linger. The youngsters who come here are pure souls, untouched by omen and gold. Men who have associated a long time with omen and gold smell of the garlic as it were. They are like a mango pecked by crows. Such a fruit cannot be offered to the deity in the temple, and you would hesitate to eat it yourself. Again, take the case of a new pot and another in which curd has been made. One is afraid to keep milk in the second pot, for the milk very often turns sour. Girish later on heard about this talk and asked Sri Ramakrishna whether the smell of garlic would go. The master replied that the smell would go if the cup was heated in a blazing fire. Once a person has become a slave of his instincts, he finds it too difficult to free himself from their clutches. Old age is too short to achieve this freedom from instincts. If your ideal is freedom from bondage and sorrow by the attainment of superconscious experience, you had better start now. And suppose one dies before attaining one's goal? Remember the passage in the Gita. Even a little of this discipline saves one from the great fear. Those who have seriously struggled in spiritual life, those who have surrendered their all to the divine, need not have any fear. There are other planes of existence where they can continue their spiritual quest. if they have lived an intensely spiritual life while alive. Then one would follow the same course where one left off. Death brings about only a change of environment, but the focus of our consciousness, viz. The divine, is always with us. Wherever we are, the infinite is always with us. When we get this idea, we lose all fear of death. We should court neither life nor death. Let destiny run its course, but let us fix our heart forever on the divine. Let us march on fearlessly, resolutely towards the goal. Until you fall asleep, until you die, always busy yourself with Vedantic thoughts. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.